Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, you all are having a wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to it, I thought, of course, that I would talk about this recent topic that I thought would be very particularly interesting. And I actually find myself kind of liking this channel, whatever, whatever this channel is. I think it's ProBox TV, whatever it is, with Paulie Malignaggi and Chris Algieri. Which, by the way, in my view, both of them are doing a tremendous job with this channel, or whatever they do. I think that they both have great chemistry, and they certainly bring much better takes than a lot of the channels that I like to review, including that of the LDBC and New Media. But the LDBC and New Media, I still like to review here and there because I think that a lot of their narratives need to be addressed, kind of to show overall what they're truly about, which pretty much is a lot of their pro-racial agenda and propaganda, and on top of that, to address, opinions of what certain boxing fans might be, and just to put my perspective out there, especially if I see anyone, in my view, that is trying to spread a bunch of bullshit. And when I say bullshit, I'm talking about, lies, other stuff like that. But anyways, what they're going to be talking about today is, of course, going to be about that of Mr. Tyson Fury. And, of course, there's a big question about, Tyson Fury and who he's going to fight next. Well, of course, he's supposed to fight Oleksandr Usyk next. But the question is, overall, is that can Tyson Fury beat that of Oleksandr Usyk? Now, I've always heard a bunch of mixed opinions, and I've stated on my channel before that Tyson Fury, in my view, at least as of yet, is the best heavyweight of this generation. And in my view, he is one of the greater heavyweights that I've ever seen. Now, does that mean that he's the greatest heavyweight that I've ever seen? Does that mean that that I think that, he's on the level of Muhammad Ali or something like that? No, not quite. But if Tyson Fury is able to defeat Oleksandr Usyk and that of Anthony Joshua, and especially retire that of undefeated, or at least beating every single one of those opponents and getting the edge over them, at least in a potential trilogy or whatever may happen, then don't have the debate there. Because at the end of the day, Muhammad Ali, when you talk about him, when you talk about that on Lennox Lewis or Rocky Marciano, when it comes down to it, Lennox Lewis and Muhammad Ali, they did have certain losses as well. It isn't like Muhammad Ali didn't lose to Joe Frazier, or overall like like Lennox Lewis didn't get knocked out by Hassan Rahman or that of Oliver McCall, when those guys, in my view, were not all-time great fighters. It is what it is. So everyone, in my view, has blemishes on the record. Now, once again, Tyson Fury, in my view, to be debated as such, is at the very least going to have to defeat that of Oleksandr Usyk. But if he ends up defeating AJ, then in my view, of course, he'll have even a greater argument overall to that. But the question is, overall, after taking a look at Tyson Fury in his last Francis Ngannou fight, will he be able to defeat that of Oleksandr Usyk and Francis Ngannou? And even a certain amount of people overall that have agreed with me on most points on my channel when it comes to the Tyson Fury subject. Of course, a lot of you people disagree with me, and I've had certain people state that Tyson Fury is a fraud and that overall that he's not that great of a fighter and that he's completely overrated and that Usyk and Anthony Joshua are going to completely dominate him. And do I agree with that? No, not really. I don't personally agree with that. And I had a certain amount of people overall, kind of tell me overall that Fury is going to get dominated by Usyk and then he's going to get beat up by AJ, blah, blah, blah. He was exposed in his last fight and he's overrated, all this sort of stuff. Well, Tyson Fury is a guy overall, once again, to where you never know. He could potentially lose to those two fighters. But with what I've seen from Tyson Fury, I'm not really going to bet on that quite as of yet. I'm not saying that he can't lose to those fighters because those fighters are both very great fighters and, they're very big threats. But you're talking about a guy that every single time that he's needed to step up to the plate, at least in a big matchup in his career, not only has he usually beaten them, but he's usually pretty much completely dominated them. Whether it was against Vladimir Klitschko when he stepped up to the plate, he pretty much beat him 9 rounds to 3. I don't even remember Vladimir Klitschko landing a single punch on Tyson Fury, really, to be honest with you, in that fight. And that was really the first mega fight of his career. And then, of course, against Deontay Wilder. Sure, Deontay was a very flawed fighter and, somewhat of a guy that had a padded record, but he also was a very big threat. He was a guy that was probably the hardest puncher of his generation. Some would debate him as the heaviest hitter of all time. A guy that was 6'7", and a guy that has a lot of heart and a lot of confidence. And someone that, in my view, would have been probably not top 10, but top 20 pound for pound at that time. And of course, Klitschko would have been top 5 to top 3 pound for pound on everybody's list. So if you want to state certain things like, Fury is going to have to improve his performance, or I think AJ or Usyk beats him, that's perfectly okay. But to say overall something like he's a complete hype job or he's a complete fraud, I just don't know if I can state that because of what he's been able to accomplish. Because every single time that Tyson Fury has needed to step up in the ring, not only has he stepped up, but he has been dominant against those fighters, whether it be against Wilder or Vladimir Klitschko or Dillian White. And that's why, he is, almost 36 years old, I believe. He's getting a little bit older, and I'm sure there's certain flaws that he has as well that maybe Usyk or that of AJ Anthony Joshua could expose. But that's why at the moment I'm not really going to write off Tyson Fury, at least as of yet, in terms of just completely getting his ass kicked against those fighters, because Fury has always been a guy that really fights to the level of his competition. I don't just base my breakdowns off of, a couple of performances. I also take a look at the character of the fighter and overall how they fight certain fighters. And when you take a look at Tyson Fury, he's a guy that's always been a little bit inconsistent, especially when he doesn't feel as motivated for a fight. And I think that for Francis Ngannou, that you could clearly tell that he heavily underestimated him. It just is what it is. But once again, every single time that he's needed to step up to the plate, he has. So once again, will Tyson Fury beat that of Usyk or AJ, or will he be exposed as overall maybe not the best heavyweight of his generation? At the current moment in time, Tyson Fury is, the best heavyweight of his generation, but it's really going to depend on these next two fights, which are going to be humongous fights. So we'll see what happens. But anyways, Paulie Malignaggi and Chris Algieri, they're going to talk about it. I'm going to tune in.
Tyson Fury says he's going to fight 5 more times, and he's far from over. He's just getting started at 35. Well, I'm not going to hold my breath. I'm going to say Tyson Fury fights once, maybe twice this year, and then never fights a professional boxer in a ring again.
I'm going to say that Tyson Fury fights that of Oleksandr Usyk, and I think that he's also going to get in the ring with that of AJ Anthony Joshua. I have a certain amount of people overall always stating in my comment section about, oh, Fury's avoiding this guy and that guy. Fury has never really avoided anybody in his career. Now, if you want to state that he pulled out of a certain fight and then later on it happened, you can state that. But at the end of the day, a man that fought Vladimir Klitschko, when he pretty much was not known for having a mega fight before that, and then got in the ring with Deontay Wilder, when he pretty much was still a little bit rusty, and then got in the ring with him 2 other times, and then also got in the ring with the #1 contender, Dillian White. That's not a person that I can say just avoids big fights. Because when you talk about any other heavyweight of this generation, whether you want to talk about Wilder, whether you want to talk about AJ, or Vladimir Klitschko, or Fury, or Usyk, when you talk about the big names in terms of the mega threats, there was Fury, there was Klitschko, there was Wilder, there was AJ, and now there's Usyk. There's only one fighter out of all those guys that has even defeated 2 of those guys. The only man that's done that has been Tyson Fury.
Might do some one-offs, fight some MMA fighters, fight some YouTubers. But in terms of being competitive at the highest level, this is the last year we're going to see Tyson Fury in a competitive boxing ring. But
it could be, and it's going to be very interesting to see where Tyson Fury goes, because he is almost 36 years old, and I'm wondering where he really is. He could be a little bit more wore down because of those Deontay Wilder fights. So we're going to see, because even though he probably should have been more dominant in the 3rd fight against Wilder, he did appear a little bit slower to me. It could maybe be because he was just underestimating him a little bit. I don't know. Personally, I think that Fury, that he did underestimate Wilder a bit in that 3rd match, but he didn't underestimate Dillian White, and that's why he was so dominant against that of Dillian White. And he didn't let Dillian White really even get a single punch in, but it's whatever. But once again, I expect Fury overall to be much more well prepared for the Usyk fight. But we'll see, because even Fury at his best, at his absolute best, Usyk's going to be a very tough cookie. He's going to be a very tough competitor.
He's got 2 fights with Usyk, 2 fights with Joshua, maybe Ngannou again. Who knows? At the rate that he's been fighting and the schedule he keeps, that means he'll be around till he's about 45.
Welcome, everyone, to Top Stories. We got the takes there from the champs here in studio, Chris Algieri and Paulie Malignaggi. And we're joined by Emmy Award-winning producer George Jakovic. And looking forward to hearing what Tyson...
Jakovic. Type of name is that?
Fury has to say about his future. This is what he posted on Instagram.
The Rock is the great one. If you even want to play in this game, you got...
I keep hearing talk of people saying that I should retire, or I'm going to retire soon, or whatever. I ain't retiring anywhere. I've got 2 fights with Usyk for the undisputed twice. Then I'm going to fight AJ at least once, maybe twice, if there's a rematch, if he wants one, after the first battering I give him. And then I'm going to fight Ngannou again. And that's just a start. So there's 5 little fights for you to whet your appetite with. I ain't going nowhere. Nowhere.
Well, there's no offense, Mr. Tyson Fury, but I can understand a lot of people's frustration, because Tyson Fury is pretty much back and forth all over the place. But I don't really become fans of these guys. I really don't get over infatuated with them or obsessed with them. So it doesn't really bother me as much as other people. But it really bothers a lot of other people because either they liked him, especially after the Wilder wins, and now they're a little bit more aggravated, or they never liked him in the first place because, let's be real, more than likely they were a part of the pro-black Deontay Wilder crowd. But it is what it is. But Fury, at the end of the day, if you're truly going to continue fighting on, and also if you're going to be proven as the best heavyweight of your generation, you're going to have to prove the overall to the public. It just is what it is, especially after your most recent performance over that of Francis Ngannou. Now, in my view, he heavily underestimated Ngannou, but he also, showed some flaws in that fight, that maybe could have not been exposed against other fighters. So we'll see.
5-year-old in the prime of my life, and I'm ready to smash up.
All right, well, the words of Tyson Fury on Instagram, and as Paulie mentioned, he's got 2 fights with Usyk, possibly 2 fights with Joshua if he batters him, as he said, and then a rematch with Ngannou. All right, George, we've heard from Chris, we've heard from Paulie. What are your take, and what do you think about what Tyson Fury said on Instagram?
So my take is if they put odds up somewhere that Tyson Fury's got 5 more fights, I'm putting all my money that he does not have 5 more fights in his career. There's no way. And Paulie, he would be fighting until he's like 50 with all these delays. And so, and he says it's just the beginning. This is Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury, who has the Netflix special, who I think that Netflix special is coming back. He's not fighting 5 more times. I mean, we don't even know if he's going to fight 2 more times. A lot of people like Sean Porter don't even think he's going to fight Oleksandr Usyk in May. So,
Tyson Fury is going to fight Oleksandr Usyk in May. Like I said, I don't really get, why all these people believe that Fury is not going to fight Usyk. Tyson Fury has always proven in the past that he's going to fight the biggest challenges in his career. Now, does that mean overall that, he has the most extensive resume? No, he doesn't have the most extensive resume because it's not like he has champion after champion after champion. But like I have certain people overall that tell me that, oh, Tyson Fury's resume is just pure shit. Well, I can't state that because if you're saying that is pure shit, then what does that make Vladimir Klitschko, Dillian White, and Deontay Wilder? Well, what does that make them?
Tyson Fury is there to entertain. He always says that. Are you not entertained? He loves that line from Gladiators. So this is Tyson Fury being Tyson Fury. There were all the rumors before this fight was postponed that he was getting dropped in sparring. Like the hottest rumor was that Opataya, the former cruiserweight.
There definitely was a rumor about that, and Tyson Fury once again is going to have to come in good shape in this fight. He usually is, but it looks like he's coming in even better shape this time, and he's going to have to be in good shape against Oleksandr Usyk because Usyk is a great fighter. He's a cardio machine, just like a lot of those Ukrainians, just like Vasily Lomachenko. When it comes down to it, he's a high IQ level fighter, and Fury's going to have to be prepared for anything.
Champion dropped him in sparring and was shipped out. But Chris, Paulie, I'm with you guys. Maybe we get this next fight, but man, he really laid out some kind of schedule. So five more fights. I'd say.
Well, Fury is definitely going to have to be more consistent, but I think also a part of the reason for the delays is that Fury has kind of lost a little bit of motivation. Fury's the type of guy, because he's so dominant in a lot of his bigger fights, and on top of that, because of his size, he finds it a little bit too easy sometimes, I think, to where he needs to find motivation in what he's doing. And sometimes certain people, when they're a little bit too dominant in their particular field or their sport, sometimes they get a little bit unmotivated because they feel no rightful challenge to them. And I think after Tyson Fury completely dominated Deontay Wilder, he thought that he was, going to maybe challenge Anthony Joshua, completely mentally break him, and then that would pretty much be the end of it. But now he has also the Ukrainian in front of him as well.
That's a good no. I'd say go to sportsbetting.ag, and there will be no line up on that. And if there was,
I believe that Tyson Fury is at least going to fight 2 more fights. I think that he's going to fight Usyk, and then if he dominates Usyk, then they're going to try to set up that humongous fight between himself and Anthony Joshua. But we'll see about that. We'll have to see. I believe that he's at least going to fight those 2 fighters, if, of course, he is able to beat that of Oleksandr Usyk, which is not a guarantee. So we'll see about that. But 5 more times, I would highly doubt it. But if Tyson Fury were to fight 5 more times, or even 4 more times, the opponents that I would love to see him face, I would love to see him face that, of course, of Oleksandr Usyk, Anthony Joshua. I also would love to see him face Joseph Parker and Andy Ruiz, because that would mean that he beat every elite champion of his day.
I would bet the under. If the over-under was 5 fights, I'm betting the under on that one.
We don't give gambling advice here on ProBox
Yeah.
TV.
George, you said the key word in there. You said or key phrase. It's Tyson being Tyson. I mean, laying all that out. We all know how boxing works in terms of the atmosphere and the landscape and how much it changes. All those fights. It's just to get people talking about it. Listen, it works. Tyson Fury is one of the biggest shows in the game today. So when he speaks, people listen. But if you just look at his track record, what's been happening lately, in terms of him fighting that often, in terms of him getting up for big fights, which every one of those that he said was a big fight, maybe not the Ngannou fight, especially by the time it happens. I just don't see it. I mean,
I don't think a lot of people really would want to accept the Ngannou fight, especially after the way that AJ cans him. But to be honest with you, I think that that's for the best because now Tyson Fury, hopefully at least, won't look at that fight as something that he really needs, unless he truly needs to feel that he needs to prove himself that well. But we'll see.
He's looked like a guy who's halfway into retirement the last 2 years in terms of how little he's fought, the way he showed up against Ngannou. He has a lot to prove in this next fight against Usyk.
I agree. He absolutely does. Now, once again, I'm not writing Tyson Fury off because Tyson Fury has always shown me that he comes really to play. He comes to bring the big guns whenever he's in a really, really true challenge. And I think that Fury believes that he's finally in a true challenge. But we'll see overall, what happens with that. I think that Fury is going to train very hard for this fight. And I think that, more than likely he probably did postpone overall, to get a little bit more prepared. But it is what it is. That way, hopefully, we get the best version of both fighters.
Which, like you said, Sean Porter's even questioning if that fight's ever going to happen. So I think there's a lot that needs to be done.
But that being said, once again, Fury does have a lot to prove in this fight. He does have a lot to prove. So we'll see.
Needs to be uncovered before we can really talk realistically about Tyson Fury's future.
Yeah, George mentioned the under. I'm with you guys. The under is 5. But how much, Paulie, does it rely on what happens with Usyk? But let's say he beats Usyk and he becomes the undisputed heavyweight champion. Does he just say, okay, I'm going to go out on top with all the belts? And that's.
I think that Fury more than likely is going to fight that of AJ Anthony Joshua. Fury is he's been wanting that AJ Anthony Joshua fight for a while. He wanted it a few years back, but the Wilder trilogy ended up stopping it because he had a rematch clause. When it came down to it, he wants that fight because not only is it a fight for a legacy, but it's a major, major payday. And Tyson Fury would love to prove himself against AJ Anthony Joshua and prove, of course, not only that he's the greatest heavyweight of his generation, but the best of the two Brits. He would love that fight.
What Chris thinks.
But if he loses, then he wants to fight him again to get him back.
And in terms of talking also about AJ Anthony Joshua, because certain people talk about, AJ's this new fighter and all sort of stuff. And let me tell you what, maybe he is. I don't think that he's a completely new fighter. I think that he's added certain things to his, game. But would I favor AJ in either the Usyk or the Tyson Fury fights with both of those guys at their best? No. AJ Anthony Joshua is a great fighter, but he has proven overall that he can be beaten and that you can, overall get him to doubt himself. It is what it is. Both Usyk and Fury are undefeated, and Usyk has already proven a couple of times overall that he can beat that of Anthony Joshua and not just beat him, but dominate him. So once again, I'm not, I'm not overall going into this whole thing of AJ, he's the best heavyweight in the world until proven otherwise. I have to see results.
Know that the results really matter, man. I mean, he kind of marches to the beat of his own drum. Does Tyson Fury? He retires when he wants. He unretires when he wants to. Also, George made a good point about the Netflix special. When the fame game gets to a high level for a human being in general, there are a lot of things you have to compartmentalize, and there are a lot more things. You have a lot more on your plate that you have to divvy your time up with. And that leaves you to not be able to dedicate the proper amount of time to boxing. And boxing is a tough.
That could somewhat be true. Fury has actually stated that he really didn't like his Netflix special that much. But Tyson Fury, once again, I think that also he felt that truly that no one was going to be able to challenge him after that of Deontay Wilder. And I think that he thought that he was going to get in the ring against Francis Ngannou and come in a little bit more out of shape. He did not look in as good a shape. And Fury's always going to be a bit flabby. But Fury did not have good stamina in that fight at all. He did not have good stamina when usually Fury has excellent stamina. Fury usually never gets tired throughout a fight. Never usually gets tired. He got a little bit tired in that fight in some of those latter rounds or some of the middle rounds. He just pulled out of that fight in my view. He barely pulled out of that fight. So there's no doubt in my mind that he did not probably train as hard overall for Francis Ngannou, and on top of that heavily underestimated him. But it is what it is. It was a great lesson. Damn near cost him a loss to an MMA fighter. But it is what it is. Sometimes these lessons are necessary.
thing to dedicate to, man. I mean, you've got to dedicate all your physical, all your mental, and really dedicate yourself in each training camp, especially if you're fighting at the highest level, which is the reason you're famous is only if you're fighting at the highest level, right? So I think that once you start to create a brand in other avenues, I think that it's a risk to keep fighting because now your brand can take a hit if you're starting to, look suspect or subpar the way he did in the Ngannou fight a few months back. So Fury has worked very hard to build up this reputation, this branding image that he has, and he wants to look good. And while he can look good, I think he'll keep fighting. But I think even he's going to realize that in order to look good, the amount of dedication and time it takes to give to boxing in order to nurture this brand and stay with it at a high level is going to be too much. He can nurture the brand in other ways. And at this point, he's already reached a high level. So he can nurture the brand doing reality shows and doing other things. Because if he keeps trying to nurture it by...
Well, we'll see about that once again. Tyson Fury has always shown me that he's going to come in high enough shape and, overall he's going to take his opponent seriously when he needs to. Now, if Tyson Fury overall looks like complete shit against Oleksandr Usyk, then I would kind of understand, and then I would kind of maybe, give into those narratives a little bit more. But, I'll have to see about that. Could it also be that Fury's just getting a little bit older and worn down? It could be very possible. Once again, he's not a young guy anymore. He's 36 years old, or, very close to it. And he's been in some wars now, especially with Deontay Wilder.
Fighting, and he can't dedicate the proper amount of time to fighting and training and all that stuff, well then, your overall brand's going to take a hit because you're going to look bad, Not all of us are Conor McGregor where we can be a punching bag and still become famous. You need a dumb enough fan base for that. But in reality, for the most part, even guys like...
Paulie, you sure talk a lot of shit for pretty much being a borderline scrub within that of boxing. It is what it is. And I like Paulie, but... You can tell that he's still a little bit pissed off overall because of that Conor McGregor situation. Listen, dude, at the end of the day, Conor McGregor is way greater for his particular sport than what you ever were for years. It is what it is. And I get it. Conor McGregor can be, a little bit vindictive, and he can go too far with the shit. But at the end of the day, Conor McGregor at one point in time was debatably the #1 pound-for-pound fighter in all the UFC. He was able to be a two-weight division champion, which is rare overall within that of the UFC's history. And he was supremely dominant, even over certain great fighters. There's no offense against Paulie Malignaggi, but usually when he got in the ring against elite level opponents, he usually got teed off on.
Tyson Fury, I think, either have to stay winning or they...
And no offense against you, Paulie Malignaggi, but talking about a punching bag, you were pretty much a punching bag for your whole entire career.
Have to move around and do other things like this reality show and other things, which can keep nurturing their brand because they've already achieved everything at the highest level in boxing.
Yeah, Chris,
Can I say real quick,
ahead,
George? I watched that whole Netflix series, the whole Tyson Fury, and he's all over the place. So that clip you just played, I think if he was hooked up to a lie detector, it would say he's telling the truth. I think he believes that in that moment. But you catch him tomorrow.
Yeah, he probably does.
And he's going to say something different. He's going to say one more fight and I'm done, and he would pass a lie detector test. That's very true as well. But that's just Tyson Fury being Tyson Fury, is what they've stated. Tyson Fury has been like that pretty much for his whole entire life and his whole entire career. Fury has always kind of been back and forth with it a little bit. It is what it is. But the question is that has Tyson Fury allowed fame overall to get to his head to the point overall to where he can no longer win the bigger fights in his career? Or is he just not good enough to beat someone like a Usyk or an AJ? Or is he a little bit more wore down because he's 36 and he's been in some wars? We'll have to see. Tyson Fury has a lot to prove in this next fight. That's how he is. So these statements that come out, I think in the moment he was being truthful, but then check with us in a week. And we could be talking about a whole different Tyson Fury story in a week.
I was going to ask, how much does his future, I mean, obviously we don't know what's going on in his head, but if he beats Usyk, becomes undisputed heavyweight champion, isn't it smart for him to just ride off in the sunset at the top of his game?
Well, he said we don't...
Well, one could debate that that's a smart thing because many would debate that he has nothing else to prove. But in my view, the best thing for Tyson Fury to do would, of course, be to fight that of Oleksandr Usyk and then fight that of AJ. But, of course, it also depends on how he looks. Because if he goes life and death with that of Oleksandr Usyk, someone that's going to be debatably or, possibly anywhere from 60 to 40 pounds lesser than him, in terms of weight, that's not going to be overall, a good look. Tyson Fury, even though Oleksandr Usyk is a great fighter, Fury should be someone relatively dominant or at least clearly win the fight against Oleksandr Usyk. He's going to have to use his power. He's going to have to use his maneuverability. He's going to have to use his size and his reach. He's going to have to use all of that.
know what's going on in his head. I don't know if he knows what's going on in his head.
And he's going to have to really overall try to bruise Usyk in some of those rounds. There's going to be times where you have to outbox him, sure, and use your length and maybe back up. But Fury really is going to have to be the pressure fighter in that fight. He's going to have to really make him uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Just like what
That's
George
the
alluded
point,
to.
right?
The point of him, and one of the reasons why I think he's so endearing to fans and to why he's such a topic of conversation whenever he does come up, is because he's wild. We don't know what's going on. We don't know what he's going to do. You don't know that unpredictability makes him must-watch TV, which is why he's got a reality TV show, which is why we're talking about him right now, which is why the media hangs on his every word. What is he going to do next? Because we have no idea. Even when he says, I'm going to fight this guy, this guy, this guy. Listen, none of us take that seriously because
Well, a big part of the reason why the media also is interested in Fury is because he's a big money man. He's a great fighter. And on top of that, he's an interesting character, always has been.
he, first of all, is not in control of all that. Second of all, this could change at any moment. So you got to take it one fight at a time. You got to see what's ahead of him. What's ahead of him right now is Oleksandr Usyk, a very motivated, a very pissed off Oleksandr Usyk. And the guy's never been beaten. People ask, what is he so good at? The guy's good at winning. He doesn't know how to lose, and
Well, neither does Tyson Fury. That's why that fight's going to be very interesting. Not just because it's going to be undisputed, but these are two guys with great heart, great will. And they're both going to have to do different things, in my view, in their fights. They're both elite level boxers that can kind of fight in a multitude of ways. It's going to be very interesting. Usyk, in my view, in order to win that fight, he's going to have to really try to get on the inside. Or if Fury gets in a mid-range boxing match with you, and if he stays too much inside the range and doesn't use his feet enough, then yeah, you can get him overall possibly with some shots. But and also try to maybe get Tyson Fury on the inside range. Tyson Fury is a great inside fighter, but against shorter fighters, he may not be able to do it quite as well because of their shorter reach. So we'll have to see. As for Fury, you're going to have to use your lead hand, set him up with the right hand, really go to the body, try to set up Usyk with that uppercut to the body or some good shots to the body, kind of like what Daniel Dubois did and some of those other fighters, because Usyk does appear overall to have a little bit of a problem with some body shots. So we'll see.
that is something that Tyson Fury, like you alluded to, champ, really needs to dedicate to. Stop talking about what you're.
And if I'm Tyson Fury and Oleksandr Usyk, both of their mindset should be to stop the other fighter. That's exactly what their mindset should be. Of course, you try to win by any means necessary, but if you're Usyk, Fury's going to be the A side in this fight. They're going to try to probably get him to win the fight if this is a close fight. They want that Fury versus AJ Anthony Joshua fight. That is a mega $1 million fight. All right, that is going to create a lot of money overall for the boxing superiors. So overall, once again, Usyk is going to have to be very dominant in this fight.
To be on the line. Don't let the man right in front of you. Don't disrespect Oleksandr Usyk's chances in this fight. I've been leaning towards Fury in the fight.
I think overall, a lot of people overall really aren't disrespecting his chances, to be honest with you. I find more people disrespecting Fury's chances, at least as of recently. Right now, I would still favor that of Tyson Fury, but I think that it took an embarrassment overall for Tyson Fury overall to realize that he's going to have to take some of these next opponents seriously. I think Fury pretty much saw overall that AJ and Usyk, that, this Usyk dude, he's pretty much a natural cruiserweight. He's a good little fighter, but he ain't beating me. I'm pretty much, the best skilled heavyweight around, and then on top of that, I weigh 80 more pounds than you, dude. Like, please, when it comes down to it, I think that's pretty much what Tyson Fury was thinking. But he's going to have to take Usyk very seriously, and I believe that he is.
I think Fury's going to win the fight, but if anything less than 100%,
I do too, but we'll see. Usyk has a great chance.
Fury shows up, it's going to be a rough night.
And he mentioned that there's 2 fights with Usyk, so this whole new thing about that happens in boxing now, where the guys do 2-fight deals, and
which is ridiculous.
If one of the fighters is dominant, I wouldn't really want to see a rematch, but I feel that if Usyk is dominant in the match, there's more likely to be a rematch than if Fury is dominant. But we'll see what happens.
ridiculous because the rematch clause that used to happen in the past, or the fact that a rematch used to depend on whether the first fight was good or even worth watching again. Now these fighters they give us this clown show where they sign 2-fight deals just to.
And once again, a lot of people are taking away at the look, the way that AJ defeated Francis Ngannou and all that is well and good, but like I said, Fury is a guy that fights to the level of his competition. So I can't really count overall at one point in time he is really in his career or how good he is just based off of 1 or 2 performances. Because Tyson Fury is a guy that always fights to the level of his career. He'll look like shit against a lower tier opponent like that of Otto Wallin, a guy that he probably should dominate, or against that of Francis Ngannou. But then against the fight of his life, he comes out with the best performance of his career. So once again, Tyson Fury is a guy to where he really needs motivation to really, pull out the best of himself.
Just as money grabs,
Well,
the
that's
way
what it is.
Spencer
And
Crawford did. Well, now nobody wants to watch the rematch, and they're told they have to talk about this rematch that nobody wants to watch. It's
Thank you for saying that, Paulie Malignaggi. Please tell Boxing Ego that. Please tell all, please tell all the LDBC new media that ain't nobody want to watch that fucking rematch other than Errol Spence Jr. fans. Ain't nobody want to see Errol Spence get a cataract in his other eye. And no, no one wants to see that rematch. Thank you, Paulie, for saying that.
I've noticed it's become sort of a common thing now, common theme in boxing. It seems like Fury and Usyk have done that, because I was gonna say, I know it's been 20 years or so since Lennox Lewis retired, right? But remember, what happens if Fury beats Usyk but doesn't look good and retires? Does he still get to walk away with the fanfare and the
accolades.
The accolades, which obviously he'll always.
Well, he'll be remembered as the best heavyweight of his generation, but from a lot of people, there will always be the question about, what would happen between Fury and AJ Anthony Joshua. So Fury, I think, wants to fight that of Usyk and AJ next, but we'll see what happens. And I would love to see him also fight Andrew Ruiz and that of Joseph Parker. Do I think that more than likely is going to happen? Probably not. Because Fury, I think, only looks at 2 more targets as necessary. I think he looks at Usyk and he looks at AJ. And if he retires only fighting and beating those guys, great, good on him. I don't mind. But I also would like to see Joseph Parker and Andrew Ruiz, especially Andrew Ruiz.
Have achieved, but will people perceive him the same, or will they sort of knock him? I remember Lennox. I mean, Lennox was losing the fight with Vitaly Klitschko and won it on a cut. He was losing on all 3 scorecards. Won it on a cut, and then didn't give the rematch and retired. And his brand, the perception of Lennox's career, rightfully so, is of a great and the heavyweight of his era, and one of the best heavyweights in history, which I agree with. But
debatably the greatest heavyweight of all time. He's right there with anybody. Like I said, there are 3 heavyweights in my view that are debatably overall the greatest heavyweights of all time. There's Rocky Marciano. Now, he probably really isn't what you would call a heavyweight during the later on generations, but of course he competed at the heavyweight during the time. And he beat pretty much everyone during his day. Some of them were a bit older, but some of them were still very good, to great. And Rocky Marciano, even at times he was a bit wild. He proved overall to be too much for everybody and to find a way to win a fight every single time. So in my view, you have Rocky Marciano, you have that of Lennox Lewis, and you have that of Muhammad Ali. If Fury is able to beat that of Usyk and also that of Anthony Joshua, and especially to retire undefeated doing so, he'll be right up there with them.
what I'm saying is, have people changed in 20 years? Obviously, it's a new generation 20 years later. Can Fury afford to win this fight and look subpar again the way he looked in the Ngannou exhibition? Can he squeak?
Well, he can somewhat do it overall because, once again, this is for undisputed. And at the end of the day, Fury, whether he wins by barely, by the skin of his teeth, or whether he wins overall just in general, I mean, sure, people will talk about it all they want to, but at the end of the day, he'll be the complete undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. And one of the only few to very do it. So once again, he would still have a lot of the fanfare. He would still have a lot of people overall praising him. But there would always be that question about what would have happened between that of Fury and AJ if he doesn't fight AJ.
One by and say, you know what, I just don't have it these last 2 fights. I'm gonna retire. Does his brain take a hit? It's a question worth asking, because people today, I don't know if they think the same way as they did before. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but it's something worth asking.
And that's an unfortunate thing for fighters today, because if that's the case, if he does go out similar to Lennox Lewis and he puts on a subpar performance but still gets the win, and then it goes, listen guys, I'm not the same guy I used to be, I'm going to retire, that shouldn't tarnish his legacy. He made the right decision.
In my view, it shouldn't either, but we'll see what happens. And it's always going to be hard, especially for certain people, to be remembered as debatably the greatest heavyweight of all time, especially when you have such an icon in that particular heavyweight division, especially with that of Muhammad Ali. Because immediately when you say that someone might debatably be over Muhammad Ali, they're going to immediately question you because they're so used to his aura.
Look at Roy Jones Jr. He came down to fight Antonio Tarver. He fights him, he beats him, squeaks by in that first fight. Then goes, listen, I'm a man, I'm going to give him his rematch.
Roy Jones, in my view, one of the top 10 greatest fighters of all time, if not top 10, top 20. But in my view, he's within the top 10. Roy Jones, for whatever reason, I'm not really sure why, he almost never gets talked about in the greatest of all time conversations, and I don't know why. I mean, Roy Jones Jr. literally for like a decade stretch was literally the greatest fighter on the planet, or the best fighter on the planet. You can debate that he had certain flaws in his system in terms of defense and other stuff like that. But at the end of the day, Roy Jones Jr. was like a 3-4 weight division champion? And at the end of the day, the dude was so supremely dominant over his level of competition. Even over some of the elite fighters of his day, like Bernard Hopkins or James Toney or some of the other guys like that. It's like, dude, you can't just disrespect Roy Jones Jr. like that in my view. But anyway.
It's starched. And that changes the legacy of Roy Jones Jr. So that's what makes it so difficult for us fighters, because it's what have you done for me lately? And unfortunately, careers are long. Guys tend to fight beyond when their best years are, because that's when the money is. That's the thing that people don't realize. We make the most money at the end of our career when we probably aren't as good as we were. And unfortunately, that's the case. And a lot of guys keep fighting and they put on subpar performances because of the money that's coming in. But if a guy like Tyson, who's made so much money and now has other avenues to make money, goes, hey, listen, I know I said this. I'm flesh and bone like anyone else. And my body isn't the same it used to be. I'm not performing the way I see myself as. I'm going to wrap it up. Like, listen, I'm still undefeated. I'm still undisputed. It is what it is. I would hope that the fanfare would look at it, but you never know. Fans are fickle.
Yeah. All right, George.
You guys, you talk about storybook endings. Chris and Paulie, you didn't have storybook endings. It just rarely happens in the sport where a guy goes out.
Well, they didn't have storybook endings because no offense against either of those fighters, but they weren't great fighters. It's no offense against them. I mean, compared to the person in the regular boxing gym, yeah, sure, they were great fighters. They were world champions. I don't mean to say overall that, they weren't somewhat relatively great, but great overall is a pretty big term. Because when you compare them to Floyd Mayweather or Pacquiao or Cotto or something like that, no, they weren't on that level. To have a storybook ending, you have to be a great fighter. All-time great fighter.
We didn't have storybook beginnings either.
Right. And wins that last big fight and steps off into the sunset. It just doesn't happen. And you would think that a guy like Fury, who's made so much money, maybe it'll happen with him. I don't know. I don't think it will. But Chris, you brought up Oleksandr Usyk and how motivated he is. He missed the birth of one of his kids when he was training for a fight that ultimately never happened. So, you talk about Usyk and his motivation. If they do fight in May, I think it's just going to ramp things up even more. And we'll see what happens. I can't wait to do a big fight preview, but.
Right, and I understand that, and I'm sure that Usyk is very motivated, but Tyson Fury is also very motivated right now as well, and he believes that his back is against the wall and that he has to prove himself. I have no doubt about that whatsoever, because he hears a lot of the talk right now, and very well warranted, because he's been all over the place. But what is, we can talk about all this motivation and him missing a child's birth and all that is well and good. It shows how motivated Usyk is. All that's great. But at the end of the day, what is Usyk going to do if Fury shows up in the best shape of his life and shows up just as dominant as what he was against Wilder and that of Vladimir Klitschko? And on top of that, the power is starting to hurt him. And he feels overall that size and that power of a man that's going to be 60, maybe even plus pounds heavier than him. And then on top of that, those body shots are hurting and he can't get past that lead hand. What's going to happen then? So once again, motivation gets you, only so far, but size. And on top of that, the skill set is going to matter. And Fury is a supremely gifted fighter, both athletically and skillfully. But we'll have to see him once again come up in the best form in his career.
I think Usyk's going to beat Fury.
That reminds me when you
That's
said
gonna be huge. Yeah.
when you said about Usyk missing the birth of his kid, that reminds me of Arnold Schwarzenegger in Pumping Iron when he missed his father's funeral, and his mom
That's
said,
right.
"You're not gonna come back for the funeral." He goes, "He'll still be dead tomorrow too." You know what I mean? I guess Alexander looked at it like, the kid will be born and he'll still be alive when I get back.
That's what winners say, man.
Yeah.
That's a winner
It's tough,
mentality.
man. Oh, it's tough though, man. It's tough, but ultimately it with
Sacrifice.
the mentality is kind of true too.
But anyways, that's pretty much about it for today. I just thought that I would talk about that. I thought that was very particularly interesting. But we'll see where this goes. That Fury versus Usyk fight is going to be a mega fight. I'm going to love to see that fight. And Fury is going to have a lot to prove in that fight. Chris Algieri is very correct when he said that in the beginning of the video. Fury has a lot to prove. I'm not writing him off as of yet. And right now, I would still favor Tyson Fury, because he's always shown me in the past that he's a guy that fights to the level of his competition. Always has. But we'll see where it goes. We'll see. But anyways, right now I would probably favor Fury by a little bit, but we'll see. I would give him, the 60-40 edge, maybe even 70-30. But if Usyk ended up pulling out, I wouldn't be shocked. So we'll see. But anyways, that's pretty much about it for today. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll talk to you all later.